Let's talk Tanya for the 26th of Shevat of a leap year. In yesterday's Tanya, we explained that the strategy, which we call the shorter way, how to combat the animal soul and its desires, its temptations, is thinking to yourself, every single sin is the equivalent, tantamount to idolatry. I'd give up my life in order not to bow down to an idol, so I should view with the equal severity any sin that there is. But we ended off yesterday's Tanya with a question, which is that really an honest calculation? Because there seems to be a difference, which is that when a person bows down to an idol, a person is guilty of idolatry. So they sever their souls from God in a permanent way. When a person does another sin, so yes, at the moment they're doing the sin, they're severed from God. At that moment, there's no difference between idolatry and any other sin. But afterwards, the relationship is recovered. So maybe the reason why we are willing to give up our lives so as not to be guilty of idolatry is because of the permanence of the detachment from God. So how can we apply that logic, and how can we therefore leverage the hidden love in order to abstain from doing any sins? So here the Alter Rebbe says, one second, let's analyze this for a moment. Idolatry, you're saying that it's a permanent detachment from God? Yeah, that is true. But even after idolatry, a person can do tshuva, a person can repent. And there's this rule, ein davar omed b'fnei tshuva. There's nothing that stands in the way of tshuva. There is no sin that is too egregious, that is too that is so bad that tshuva cannot repair, and the relationship with God cannot be repaired afterwards. So theoretically, idolatry also is temporary. In other words, when a person has a gun to their head, and the person says, either bow down to the cross, or we're going to shoot you, the person can say, okay, I'll bow down to the cross, and I'll do tshuva afterwards. So at least in theory, that's also temporary. But people don't make that calculation. Jews give up their lives. So it's not about whether it's temporary or permanent. There is something about idolatry which a Jew is just not willing to engage in, regardless of whether it's permanent or temporary. The experience itself is so repulsive, is so terrible, is so painful that a Jew will not subject themselves to that. You just think practically, there's certain things that we'll engage, even if they're unpleasant. But if we know that it's only temporary, okay, if the price is right, we'll engage in that. There's certain things that are so awful, so terrible, so disgusting, that it's not a matter of, it'll be over in 10 minutes, or it'll be over in a day. It's not about that. It's an experience that I cannot envision myself engaging in whatsoever. Think about in a relationship. Okay, so I can do something nasty to someone who I love, but then afterwards, I can say I'm sorry, and that person will forgive me. That doesn't help. The actual act is something that I can't do. A Jew cannot worship an idol. And if we're to understand that every single sin is the same thing, then there is no difference. The fact that afterwards my relationship can be mended doesn't make a difference. And ultimately, as the Alter Rebbe explains, it's because that conviction that I must stay connected to God comes from a place in my soul which transcends time, which is beyond time. It is the essence of my soul. And therefore, it doesn't make a difference whether it's for a minute or for an eternity. I cannot disconnect from God willingly. And if I understand that every sin is doing that, then I can leverage my hidden love to make sure that I never do any sin, regardless of what the nature of that sin is. That is when it comes to abstaining from sin. Can we leverage the hidden love also to serve God proactively? We'll find out the answer to that question in tomorrow's Tanya.